What does it mean to rule? For most of history, to rule meant power, commanding armies, holding wealth, shaping nations. But Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful emperors in history, flipped this idea upside down. He believed that before you could rule others, you had to rule yourself, and he insisted that this was far more difficult than wearing a crown. Think about that for a moment. Marcus wasn't just a philosopher sitting quietly in a study. He was the emperor of Rome, ruler of the most expansive empire the world had ever seen. He commanded legions, signed decrees, and had authority over millions. Yet in his private journal, which we now know as Meditations, he admitted that his toughest battle wasn't with barbarians at the borders, nor with political rivals inside Rome. His greatest battle was against himself. Why? Because ruling yourself means wrestling with the wildest forces in existence, your own thoughts, emotions, and desires. You can defeat an army, but can you defeat anger? You can command thousands, but can you command your impulses? You can conquer nations, but can you conquer your own mind? This was the paradox Marcus Aurelius lived with every day. The throne gave him power, but philosophy forced him to humility. He knew that real mastery came not from commanding the world, but from disciplining the self. Now pause here. Ask yourself honestly, are you the ruler of your own life, or are you a prisoner to it? Because in the modern world, ruling yourself may be harder than ever. Your attention is constantly pulled by glowing screens. Your emotions are triggered by headlines designed to provoke fear or outrage. Your desires are manipulated by ads telling you what to buy, who to be, and what to want. Marcus didn't have Instagram. He didn't have 24-hour news, but he had the same human nature we do, the same tendency toward anger, jealousy, distraction, and despair. His writings show us a man struggling to keep his soul steady, while chaos roared around him. And here's the striking part. If Marcus, emperor of Rome, found ruling himself to be the hardest task, then what does that say about us? Maybe the truth is this: ruling others is easy. Ruling yourself is divine. That's why the Stoics, Marcus included, insisted that self-mastery is the foundation of all philosophy. You cannot live well, you cannot lead well, you cannot even love well unless you first learn to govern your own mind. But self-mastery doesn't mean suppressing everything human within you. It doesn't mean becoming cold or detached. Marcus still loved, still felt pain, still mourned, still doubted. What set him apart was his ability to face those emotions without letting them rule him. When grief struck, he reminded himself, death is natural. When anger boiled, he whispered, others act out of ignorance. When fear tempted him, he declared, what will happen, and I will endure. To rule yourself is to accept that the world will never bend fully to your will, but your mind, your choices, your character, those are yours to govern. And that is where true sovereignty lies. This is the opening lesson Marcus Aurelius gives us. Before you dream of controlling the world, learn to control yourself. The crown you wear inside, the crown of discipline, clarity, and virtue, is worth more than any throne outside. So let's begin our journey. Let's step into the mind of Marcus Aurelius and uncover how a man who ruled the world learned first to rule himself. When Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations, he wasn't writing for history. He wasn't writing to inspire future generations or to leave behind a legacy. He was writing to himself, a soldier of the mind, preparing for battle every single day. But his battlefield wasn't just the plains of Germania or the marble halls of Rome. His real battlefield was within. Imagine being Marcus for a moment. You wake up in the emperor's palace. Servants are waiting, advisors are knocking, and soldiers are preparing for orders. At any moment, news could arrive of uprisings, wars, or betrayals. Outwardly, you are the master of the Roman world, but inwardly the war begins before you even rise from your bed. How do you conquer laziness when your body demands rest? How do you restrain anger when an advisor insults your judgment? How do you resist indulgence when endless luxuries are placed before you? These are the enemies Marcus fought every single day, not men with swords, but emotions with claws. He often reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Notice his focus. Not armies, not wealth, not politics, but the mind itself. The Stoics believe that the greatest enemy of a person is not another human being, but the untrained soul. Anger, fear, greed, pride. These are forces that enslave more people than any emperor ever could, and Marcus knew it. He admitted in his writings that anger was his most dangerous opponent. He prayed not to be ruled by rage, even though, as emperor, he had the power to punish anyone he wished. Think about that. Imagine having the authority to execute your enemies at a word, and yet telling yourself, control your temper first. That is the measure of a man who sought to rule himself. Marcus saw desire in the same way. Rome offered endless pleasures, feasts, entertainment, sensuality. Yet he wrote that indulgence only weakens the soul. True strength comes not from taking everything you want, but from denying what you don't need. Self-discipline, he believed, was the essence of freedom. If you cannot say no to yourself, then you are not free at all. This was his battlefield, a constant struggle between reason and passion, wisdom and impulse. And he knew victory was never permanent. Self-mastery is not something you achieve once. It is a war you fight daily. Each morning, he would remind himself that people would be selfish, foolish, even cruel, but his duty was not to sink to their level. His duty was to remain just, calm, and disciplined. Here's where Marcus's wisdom becomes personal for us. We may not sit on a throne, but our battles are the same. Every time you resist scrolling endlessly when your mind tells you to focus, you win a skirmish. Every time you choose patience over anger when someone offends you, you claim a victory. Every time you resist a desire that weakens you, you stand as a ruler over yourself. These are not small victories. They are the foundation of freedom, because a person who cannot control his anger is a slave, no matter his wealth. A person who cannot control his desires is weak, no matter his power. And a person who cannot control his thoughts is lost, no matter his knowledge. Marcus Aurelius understood this better than anyone. That is why he spent more time fighting himself than fighting others. He knew the empire could collapse, enemies could invade, fortune could vanish. But the one empire that must never fall is the empire within. This is the battlefield he invites us to enter. And the first command is this: know your enemies. Look inside yourself. Name the passions that rule you: fear, anger, desire, pride. Only when you know them can you begin the war to master them. Because the truth is clear. The greatest victories are not won on foreign soil. They are won in the silent chambers of the soul. Marcus Aurelius faced a truth that few rulers ever dared to admit. No matter how powerful you are, you cannot control everything. This might sound strange. After all, Marcus was the emperor of Rome. He commanded the legions, controlled the laws, and shaped the destiny of millions. Yet in his private writings, he constantly reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Why would the most powerful man in the world need to repeat this lesson? Because even emperors discover their limits. Marcus could order a campaign, but he could not guarantee victory. He could decree justice, but he could not guarantee fairness. He could command loyalty, but he could not guarantee love. Fate, chance, and human nature always intervened. And this is where philosophy became his anchor. The Stoics taught a principle known as the dichotomy of control. In simple terms, life can be divided into two categories: things you can control and things you cannot. Peace, they argued, comes only when you stop wasting energy on the second and focus entirely on the first. For Marcus, this principle was not abstract, it was survival. Consider the plague that swept Rome during his reign. It killed thousands, perhaps millions. Did Marcus control it? Number. He could not stop the disease, but he could control how he faced it, with courage, calm, and reason. Or take war. His reign was filled with battles along the empire's borders. Did he control whether enemies would attack? Number. But he controlled whether he would respond with fear or with steadiness. This is the art of control, not controlling the world, but mastering your response to it. Now pause and think about your own life. How much of your stress, your anger, your despair comes from trying to control what you simply cannot? You can't control what people say about you. You can't control whether fortune favors you tomorrow. You can't control the past, and you can't control death. But you can control your thoughts. You can control your actions. You can control the kind of person you choose to be, no matter what happens. This is not weakness. It is strength. In fact, it is the only true strength, because everything else can be taken away. Marcus Aurelius lived this truth. Imagine the burden of ruling Rome. Every day, petitions, complaints, disasters, betrayals. He knew he could not fix everything, but he also knew he could remain just, calm, and disciplined in the face of it all. That was his victory. We too live surrounded by chaos, not of empires, but of constant change. Jobs come and go, relationships shift, health rises and falls. The person who tries to control everything outside will live in constant frustration, but the one who focuses on controlling the inner kingdom, his thoughts, choices, and character, will live in peace. The Stoics didn't mean we should ignore the world. Marcus still fought wars, passed laws, cared for his people, but he never let outcomes enslave him. He did his duty and accepted what he could not change. This is the balance he teaches us. Act with all your strength where you have control, and accept with all your grace where you do not. So the art of control is not about bending reality to your will. It is about bending your will to reality. That is how you achieve freedom in a world that will never obey you. Marcus Aurelius shows us that real power isn't measured in legions or crowns. Real power is measured in the ability to say, this is outside my control, but I remain unshaken. And that is how the emperor of Rome became a servant of wisdom and a ruler of himself. Rome, during the reign of Marcus Aurelius, was not a quiet empire. It was a place of constant turmoil, political conspiracies, military campaigns, economic pressures, and the deadly Antonine plague sweeping across the population. The emperor himself was not shielded from this chaos. His daily life was filled with endless noise, advisors whispering, generals arguing, senators plotting, citizens demanding. And yet in the middle of this storm, Marcus often wrote about one thing: peace. But what kind of peace? Certainly not the peace of a quiet countryside or a life free of responsibility. Marcus was emperor. Such peace was impossible. Instead, he sought inner peace, a calm center that no external chaos could disturb. He reminded himself, nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul. Retreat to this place and renew yourself. This was not escapism. Marcus did not abandon his duties or turn his back on Rome. Instead, he created a fortress within his mind, a place where noise could not penetrate, no matter how loud the world became. Imagine what that meant for him. While senators schemed, while enemies pressed Rome's borders, while sickness spread through the streets, Marcus could retreat inward, not to ignore reality, but to face it with strength. And this lesson is more relevant to us today than perhaps ever before. Our world is louder than Rome ever was. Notifications buzz, headlines scream, advertisements fight for our attention every waking second. Noise doesn't just surround us, it invades us. It steals our focus, scatters our thoughts, and leaves us restless. The modern cave is not underground, it's in your pocket. The glow of a screen can keep you chained just as surely as the walls of Plato's cave. So how do we silence the noise? Marcus Aurelius offers us 3 practices. Firstly, for Marcus, this was writing in his journal, the Meditations. It was his way of stepping away from the crowd and reminding himself of who he wanted to be. For us, it might be journaling, meditation, prayer, or even quiet walks. The key is consistency. A daily retreat is how you sharpen your soul amid chaos. Secondly, Marcus often told himself, if you seek tranquility, do less, or rather do what's essential. He stripped life down to what mattered: justice, courage, wisdom, and self-control. The rest, noise. Imagine how different your life would feel if you filtered out the non-essential. Thirdly, noise only controls you when you give it your focus. Marcus understood that other people's opinions, gossip, and distractions are like shadows. They vanish if you refuse to chase them. In a world where attention is currency, withholding it becomes an act of strength. Marcus Aurelius proves that peace is not the absence of chaos. It's the mastery of yourself within chaos. The world will always roar, but you do not have to roar with it. You can remain steady, calm, grounded. Think of a mountain in the middle of a storm. Winds howl, lightning cracks, rain pours, but the mountain does not move. That is what Marcus trained himself to be. That is what Stoicism asks of us: to become unmoved by noise, anchored in clarity, rooted in peace. Because the truth is, you will never silence the world, but you can silence yourself, and in that silence, you discover strength greater than any empire. Marcus Aurelius lived with death closer than most of us can imagine. As emperor, he saw soldiers fall in countless battles, citizens swallowed by famine, and entire families wiped out by the Antonine plague. Death was not a distant idea. It walked beside him every day, whispering in the streets of Rome and echoing in the silence of the palace. And yet, instead of shrinking from this shadow, Marcus turned toward it. He wrote again and again in his Meditations, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This was not morbid obsession. It was clarity. For Marcus, the awareness of death was not meant to depress. It was meant to sharpen. Death was the ultimate mirror, reflecting back what truly mattered and what was only illusion. Think about it. What if every argument, every distraction, every petty worry was weighed against the certainty of death? How much of it would suddenly seem small? How much of it would simply dissolve? Marcus understood that only those who face death honestly can ever truly live. Self-mastery begins when you stop pretending you are infinite. Mortality strips away the trivial. When you know time is short, gossip becomes meaningless. Material possessions lose their shine, and tomorrow is no longer guaranteed. What remains? Virtue, character, integrity, the way you live today. Marcus taught himself that death was not an enemy, but a teacher. It reminded him that every sunrise was borrowed, every breath a gift. He could not control how long he lived, but he could control how well he lived. And that is the heart of Stoicism. Focus only on what is within your power. You cannot command fate. You cannot demand more days, but you can master how you spend the days you are given. Our world, unlike Marcus's, hides death behind closed doors. We distract ourselves with endless entertainment, chase comfort, and speak of death in hushed tones. But here's the paradox. The more we deny death, the more powerless we become in life. We live as though tomorrow is infinite, postponing our dreams, wasting hours, and giving our energy to things that don't matter. Marcus would call this self-slavery. You are not free if you live in fear of death. You are not free if you refuse to look at life's limits. To rule yourself, you must confront the one truth: no emperor, no soldier, no philosopher can escape. You will die. Marcus did not just think about death abstractly. He practiced memento mori, the meditation on mortality. Here are 3 ways he applied it. Firstly, daily reflection. He reminded himself each morning, this could be my last day, not to give up but to live it fully, without postponement. Secondly, letting go of insults and trivialities. He trained his mind to ask, will this matter when I am gone? If not, he refused to give it power. Thirdly, choosing virtue over delay. By facing death, Marcus forced himself to act with urgency, to be just, wise, and disciplined now, not someday. Marcus's strength lay not in denying his shadow but in walking with it. Death was not a curse, but a compass. It pointed him toward self-mastery, reminding him that only inner virtue survives when everything else is stripped away. Picture it this way. You are a mountain, and death is the shadow cast at your feet. The shadow follows you, yes, but it does not diminish the mountain. It defines its shape. Death defines life the same way. Marcus Aurelius's message is clear. To rule yourself, you must remember you are mortal. That truth does not weaken you. It frees you. It strips away the unnecessary, focuses your will, and gives your actions weight. Because when you live as if you could die at any moment, you finally begin to live as you were meant to. Marcus Aurelius knew that ruling Rome was nothing compared to ruling himself. Armies could be commanded, provinces governed, laws enforced, but the hardest battle was always inside, the battle against desire. Desire is powerful. It whispers promises of pleasure, ease, and escape. It distracts us with food, lust, wealth, or glory, and for most people desire is the silent master pulling the strings of their lives. But Marcus, influenced by Stoic philosophy, taught himself a crucial lesson. You are either a master of your desires or a slave to them. Desire has no limit. You satisfy one craving and another rises. You achieve one goal and suddenly it isn't enough. The mind, left unchecked, becomes like a fire, never satisfied, always hungry for more fuel. Marcus observed this truth in the wealthiest Romans of his day, senators drowning in luxury, emperors who killed for more power, citizens who wasted their lives chasing entertainment. The more they got, the emptier they became. He wrote, "It is not what we desire that harms us, but our inability to stop desiring." Think about that. Pleasure itself is not the enemy. It is the chains we place on ourselves when we let desire rule us. Marcus believed the path to freedom was not denial, but discipline. The Stoics did not demand total rejection of pleasure, but rather balance. Eat, but do not overindulge. Love, but do not cling. Work for wealth, but do not depend on it. The test was simple. Can I step away from this desire and still remain whole? If the answer was no, then desire had already become a prison. In our time, Marcus's warning is sharper than ever. We live in an age built to exploit desire. Advertisements tempt us constantly. One more purchase, one more scroll, one more dopamine hit. Social media feeds are designed to keep you hungry. Streaming platforms never end. Fast food, fast entertainment, fast pleasure. It is all engineered for endless craving. And here is the danger. The more we give in, the weaker our will becomes. Slowly we surrender our freedom, not to emperors or tyrants, but to the tyranny of our own urges. Marcus Aurelius would say, if you cannot govern yourself, you will never truly be free. Marcus trained his mind with practical exercises that anyone today can use. Firstly, voluntary discomfort. He reminded himself to sleep on a hard surface, eat plain food, or endure the cold. This was not punishment but training, to prove to himself that comfort did not control him. Secondly, pause before pleasure. Before enjoying anything, he asked, do I control this, or does this control me? If he could walk away, he allowed himself the joy. If not, he refused it. Thirdly, reframe desires. He trained himself to see luxury for what it really was. A fancy meal was just animal flesh and vegetables. Fine wine was just fermented grapes. Gold was just metal. Stripping away illusions gave him power over them. Here lies the paradox. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of the known world, was most powerful not when he commanded legions, but when he commanded himself. A man who cannot say no to his desires is not a ruler at all. He is ruled, but a man who disciplines his desires becomes unshakable. Wealth cannot corrupt him. Pleasure cannot trap him. Fear cannot weaken him. That is true sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius's lesson for us is timeless. Do not destroy desire. Discipline it. Let pleasure serve you, not enslave you. Rule your urges with wisdom, and you will rule yourself with strength. Because the world outside may be chaotic, but the true empire you must govern is within. History remembers Marcus Aurelius as the last of the 5 good emperors. He commanded Rome at its height, facing wars, plagues, and political unrest. And yet what makes him immortal is not the size of his empire, but the strength of his soul. Marcus did not rule because of his armies, his wealth, or his title. He ruled because he ruled himself first. This is the essence of Stoicism, and the legacy he left behind. Unlike other emperors, Marcus did not write decrees for fame or monuments for vanity. Instead, he wrote in a private journal, whispering wisdom to himself. Those notes became the Meditations, a book never intended for the world, yet one that has guided millions for centuries. In those pages, we see a man reminding himself daily, control your mind, accept fate, discipline desire, serve others with justice. It was not a performance. It was not for applause. It was self-mastery in action. Marcus Aurelius showed us that ruling others without ruling yourself is an illusion. Power without wisdom collapses. Authority without humility corrupts. But when a man governs his own mind, he becomes unshakable, and his leadership shines naturally. This is why Marcus inspired loyalty. His soldiers followed him, not only because he was emperor, but because he shared their hardships. He slept in tents, marched in the snow, endured the same pain they did. He led with discipline, not indulgence, with justice, not arrogance, with compassion, not cruelty. And that is why his name endures where tyrants are forgotten. Marcus's legacy is not about ruling Rome. It is about ruling yourself before the world, because the empire of self is the only empire you truly own. Kingdoms fall, borders shift, wealth disappears, bodies age, but the mind, if governed with wisdom, remains sovereign until the very end. This is the empire Marcus invites us to build, an empire where reason is king, where discipline is the guard, where justice is the law, where virtue is the treasure. When you master this inner empire, no external storm can overthrow you. In today's world of distraction, division, and desire, Marcus Aurelius speaks louder than ever. We seek leaders, heroes, and guides, but the truth is, each of us must first lead ourselves.